So why is Geneva so important? Well, to me personally, it's important because as well as wearing my Union Jack t-shirt, I can also wave my Swiss flag because it is my city of adoption as a Swiss citizen. But more importantly to the book, it's important, both the city and the region, to the historical and contemporary political process of globalization. For example, high above Vevey at the north end of Lac Léman, overlooking the most breathtaking view of the lake and the Alps, and the headquarters, worldwide headquarters of the Nestlé Corporation, is Mont Pèlerin, where in 1947 a most significant meeting took place. A group of economists, historians, and philosophers came together to share their common convictions. The outcome was the formation of the Mont Pèlerin Society, which was to become a major influencer of politicians and other thought leaders across the world, to bring about the emergence of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a rebirth of economic, political, and philosophical classical liberalism, as advocated in the 18th century by Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and others. Neoliberalism is at the foundation of free trade, free market economy, and hands-off government, our predominant system for the last 3 or 4 decades. From Genesis to Geneva describes the origins and helps discover the good and the ills of neoliberalism, and to form opinions of what changes are needed to move forward to a more equitable solution. And the second reason I think that Geneva is very, very important is its role in the history of religion. Geneva has been at the heart of the Reformation movement of the 1500s. John Calvin's 500th birthday was celebrated here this year. Geneva is the home to the World Council of Churches and to the Lutheran World Federation. Far from being introspective navel-gazers, these organizations strive for important progress, being in touch with real-world issues, standing up for human rights, and working to resolve interfaith differences that can lead to frictions. Interfaith dialogue is an ever more important activity, but it is a slow process. And how far should the Church be vocal about current political violence that uses religion as an excuse, or that violates even the basic human values shared by most? St. Peter's Cathedral stands at the highest point of Geneva's Old Town. Just below it is the Lutheran Church of Geneva, which has just celebrated 300 years of worship here. From Genesis to Geneva discovers the origins and incredible early progress of Islam, the honorable and dishonorable outcomes of the Crusades, the split of the Catholic Church, the Reformation, the continuing fight over the Holy Land and its devastating influence on international terrorism. Right next to where I do most of my writing is a river where I have taken regular walks for exercise and inspiration. In the epilogue of the book, I speak of it as a microcosm of globalization. That river is a source of life. It has carved out its trace over millennia. It is an indicator of climate change, as it almost dried up the year that no snow at all fell on the Jura. Yet it became again hyperactive the following summer, which turned out to be the wettest in decades. Flooding and landslides occurred in Switzerland that year, as in many parts of the world. The river is tiny, yet its energy has been harnessed since the late 19th century, the time when electricity distribution was starting to become widespread, and communication technology infrastructure like underwater cables were evolving along with all the international political maneuverings to take advantage of them. Here, water is piped underground and flow to this power station, where the original turbines operated continuously from 1899 until they were renewed in 1999. Switzerland used to be self-sufficient in power generation from its massive high-altitude hydroelectric power stations, and they still provide a significant portion of the country's needs. including all of that required by the Swiss railways.
And reminders of global conflict exist here, outside of Geneva. These devices are not made of chocolate, but they are called the Toblerone. The Toblerone were placed here at the beginning of World War II to avoid, or at least delay, any eventual attack by Hitler's tanks. And they're left here as a reminder of that period. And they stretch for 10 kilometers from the foothills of the Jura Mountains all the way down to Lake Geneva. As part of these fortifications, 2 villas were constructed, the so-called Blue Villa and the Villa Rose. They are camouflage for military installation. The window shutters open to reveal heavy guns, and the basements are troop bunkers. Because World War II arose from the ashes of World War I, From Genesis to Geneva attempts to analyze the motives of Germany, France and Britain for entering into World War I. What happened to keep it going? How the world was sliced up? Then how Germany was placed in an impossible situation to cope thereafter. Firstly by the misguided conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, and later by the drying up of capital from the US as a result of the 1929 crash and the Depression.
My local river merges with others and flows into Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva, or Lac Léman to give it its correct name, is itself fed from the mighty glaciers of the Alps. The water level of the lake, and of course the downstream river, is controlled in Geneva by these modern sluice gates. The outgoing flow of the Rhone can be impressive. Downstream summer bathers take advantage of the relatively safe, free ride. A little further on, the river is joined by the waters of the Arve, a confluence of two major water sources, one that has moved through Lake Geneva, and the other having tossed and tumbled down the mountains to stir up a cloudy suspension which it carries to this fascinating meeting. The confluence of rivers continues, and the journey of these combined waters of the Rhone will flow to the Mediterranean, as long as the sun's energy provides for the continuing water cycle of nature. Geneva replaced their old wooden sluice gates for controlling water levels and flows. Those are essential regulators of a system that must remain in place for as long as they serve a purpose, for those upstream as well as those downstream. Finally, why is Geneva important? Geneva is a home for many global government and non-governmental agencies. Switzerland, as a neutral country, was chosen to host the League of Nations between the two world wars, and now the largest center of the United Nations outside of New York. The post-Second World War GATT and the current World Trade Organization is also headquartered in Geneva. All of these organizations have responsibilities on behalf of everyone on the planet. For some of them, we must consider seriously how to renovate or replace their sluice gate technology before too much erosion takes place. From Genesis to Geneva discovers how these organizations have dealt well with multilateralism and why they are failing to continue that success in some areas. The big question is what to change and what to replace, whether change means fine-tuning or structural transformation. As regular citizens, we might not have the solutions, but we must have sufficient visibility to pose pertinent questions and to build our opinions on the best answers we can get. Then, through our vote, our actions, and our consumption habits, we can make a big difference.